Hi guys, let's read the international issues and bilateral relations section of the 12th series of ALS Current Affairs 2019-2020. So the first topic is SIBRI Yearbook, SIPRI Yearbook. So, a new yearbook has been released by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, on June 15, 2020. The yearbook assesses the current state of armaments, disarmament, and international security. The highlights of the yearbook are as follows. Number one, all nations that have nuclear weapons continue to modernize their nuclear arsenals, while India and China increased their nuclear warheads in the last 1 year. China is in the middle of a significant modernization of its nuclear arsenal. China's nuclear arsenal has gone up from 290 warheads in 2019 to 320 in 2020. China is developing a so-called nuclear triad for the first time. China is developing a so-called nuclear triad for the first time, made up of new land and sea based missiles and nuclear capable aircraft. Number 4. India's nuclear arsenal went up from 130 to 140 in 2019 to 150 in 2020. Number 5. Pakistan too is slowly increasing the size and diversity of the nuclear forces. It has reached 160 in 2020. Both China and Pakistan continue to have larger nuclear arsenals than India. Number 7. Together, the 9 nuclear armed states, the US, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, China, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea, possessed an estimated 13,400 nuclear weapons at the start of the 2020, which marked a decrease from an estimated 13,865 nuclear weapons at the beginning of 2019. The decrease in the overall numbers have largely the decrease in the overall numbers was largely due to the dismantlement of old nuclear weapons by Russia and the US, which together possesses over 90% of the global nuclear weapons. Number 9. The US and Russia have reduced their nuclear arsenals under the 2010 New Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, New START, but it will lapse in February 2021 unless both parties agree to prolong it. SIPRI. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, established in 1966, is an independent international institute dedicated to research into conflict, armaments, arms control, and disarmament. Based in Stockholm, the institute provides data, analysis, and recommendations based on open sources to policymakers, researchers, media, and the interested public. Now let's come to the next topic, that is World Investment Report 2020. Recently, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, released the World Investment Report 2020. The World Investment Report focuses on trends in foreign direct investment worldwide at the regional and country levels and emerging measures to improve its contribution to development. Key points. Global scenario. Number 1. According to the report, global FDI flows are forecast to decrease by up to 40% in 2020 from their 2019 value of $1.54 trillion. This would bring global FDI below 1 trillion US dollar for the first time since 2005. The FDI is projected to decrease by a further 5% to 10% in 2021. Developing economies are expected to see the biggest fall in FDI because they rely more on investment in global value chain (GVC) based industries which have been severely hit due to COVID-19 pandemic. They have also not been able to put in place the same economic support measures as developed economies. Number 4. However, the investment flows are expected to slowly recover by the start of 2022. Number 5. Global FDI flows rose modestly in 2019, following the sizable declines registered in 2017 and 2018. The rise in FDI was due to the waning of impact of the 2017 tax reforms in the United States. India's investment scenario. Number 1. India jumped from 12th position in 2018 to 9th position in 2019 among the world's largest FDI recipient. So India got the 9th position in 2019 among the world's largest FDI recipients. In 2019, the FDI inflows into India jumped over 20% to 51 billion US dollar. Number 2. The report also observed that FDI into India may decline sharply in 2020 because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent lockdown measures, supply chain disruptions and economic slowdown. Number 8. In India, the number of greenfield investment announcements declined by 4% in the first quarter of the financial year 2020 to 21. The mergers and acquisitions (M&A) also contracted by 58%. Number B. A greenfield investment is a type of FDI in which a parent company creates a subsidiary in a different country, building its operations from the ground up. Number 3. However, the report mentioned that India's large market will continue to attract market-seeking investments to the country. Number A. India's professional services and the digital economy could see a faster rebound as global venture capital firms and technology companies continue to show interest in India's market through acquisitions. Number B. Investors concluded deals worth over $650 million in the first quarter of 2020, mostly in the digital sector. UNCTAD. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development was established in 1964 to promote development-friendly integration of developing countries into the world economy. The UNCTAD is a permanent intergovernmental body headquartered at Geneva in Switzerland. Some of the reports published by it are: Number 1. Trade and Development Report. Number 2. World Investment Report. Number 3. The Least Developed Countries Report. Number 4. Information and Economy Report. Number 5. Technology and Innovation Report. Number 6. Commodities and Development Report. So, what are the reports published by UNCTAD? The first one is Trade and Development Report, second is World Investment Report, third is the Least Developed Countries Report, number 4, Information and Economy Report, number 5, Technology and Innovation Report, and number 6, Commodities and Development Report. Now let's come to the next topic, that is development in India Africa ties. The COVID-19 pandemic has been one of the worst humanitarian and economic crises faced by the world, but its effects tend to be much more devastating, particularly for Africa, where economic and public health conditions are extremely vulnerable. In the 21st century, Africa has transformed from a lost continent to a continent of hope. Subsequently, in recent years, Africa occupies a central place in the Indian government's foreign and economic policy. In the context of the current crisis, India has demonstrated its willingness and capacity to shoulder more responsibility in cooperating with Africa to recover from the current crisis and lend support in its overall growth. This may act as a testament to India's status as a responsible and reliable global stakeholder. India's developmental efforts in Africa. India's developmental efforts in Africa. Support in fight against COVID-19. Under the EITEC initiative, India has shared COVID-19 management strategies, training webinars exclusively aimed at training healthcare professionals from Africa by Indian health experts. India is also sending consignments of essential medicines, including hydroxychloroquine, HCQ, and paracetamol, to many African countries in addition to doctors and paramedics. Increasing political and economic engagement. In the last few years, Africa has been the focus of India's development assistance and also diplomatic outreach, as evident in plans to open 80 new embassies. Also, India Africa trade reached $62 billion in 2018 compared to $39 billion during 2009-10. India's duty-free tariff preferentially okay India's duty-free tariff preferential scheme for least developed nations LDCs launched in 2008 has benefited 33 African states. Grants in aid. After South Africa, Africa is the second largest recipient of Indian overseas assistance, with lines of credit (LOC) worth nearly $10 billion, nearly 40% of the total LOC globally, spread over 100 projects in 41 countries. Capacity building via e-governance initiative. India is investing in the capacity building, providing more than $1 billion in technical assistance and training to personnel under the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, that is ITEC program. 40% of all training and capacity building slots under the ITEC program has traditionally been reserved for Africa. India has also invested $100 million in the Pan-African e-network to bridge the digital divide in Africa, leveraging its strengths in information technology. Security cooperation. Approximately 6,000 Indian soldiers are deployed in UN peacekeeping missions in conflict zones in Africa. Cooperation on multiple fronts. Bilateral cooperation includes solar energy, cooperation in International Solar Alliance development. Okay, so bilateral cooperation includes solar energy development, information technology, cybersecurity, maritime security, disaster relief, counter-terrorism, and military training. Opportunities in India Africa relations. Addressing food security. Agriculture and food security can also be a fulcrum for deepening ties. Africa has major chunk of the world's arable land but produces a very small percentage of the global agri output. India has proven expertise in the agriculture sector, being the top producer of much agricultural produce. Thereby, India and Africa both can cooperate in ensuring food and nutritional security for each other. Becoming voice of developing world, just as India and Africa fought colonialism together, both can now collaborate together for a just, representative, and democratic global order that has a voice for around one third of humanity that lives in Africa and India. Combating neo-colonialism. China has been actively pursuing Yearbook and donation diplomacy in Africa. China has been actively pursuing Yearbook and donation diplomacy in Africa. However, Chinese investment is seen as neo-colonial in nature as it focuses on money, political influence, hard infrastructure projects, and resource extraction. India's approach, on the other hand, is one that focuses on building local capacities and an equal partnership with Africans and not merely with African elites concerned. In this context, though Africa has been actively engaged with China, it wants India to act as a balancer and net security provider, enabling strategic convergence. Under the recent Quad Plus initiative, whereby the countries US, India, Japan, and Australia have recently engaged other countries such as South Korea, Vietnam, New Zealand, Israel, and Brazil, exchanged views and proposed cooperation with select African countries about the Indian Ocean. Both India and Japan share a common interest in forging a partnership for Africa's development through the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. In this context, India can leverage its global status to establish Africa on the strategic map of the global politics. Preventing global rivalries. In recent years, several global economic players have strengthened their engagement with African states, with an eye to rising economic opportunities, including in energy, mining, infrastructure, and connectivity. As global engagement in Africa increases, India and Africa can ensure that Africa does not once again turn into a theater of rival ambitions. Now let's come to the conclusion. India has an intrinsic interest in helping Africa achieve progress. The spirit of developing together as equals defines this bilateral partnership. A resurging Africa and a rising India can give a strong impetus to South-South cooperation, especially when it comes to addressing challenges in areas like clean technology, climate resilient agriculture, maritime security, connectivity, and blue economy. Now let's come to the next topic, that is India China border tension. Recently, there has been an increased tension in the India China relations due to the Chinese transgressions into Indian territory across the disputed line of actual control (LAC) in Ladakh. This has led to a rise in the intensity of troop concentration, which may aggravate the current face off in eastern Ladakh, becoming a bigger military confrontation. These developments can be termed as against the informal summit's objectives, the Wuhan Spirit 2018 and Mamallapuram Summit 2019 between the Indian Prime Minister and Chinese President, which called for a peaceful and diplomatic resolution of any conflict. However, it is in the interest of both India and China and global peace to avoid any military confrontation and seek peaceful coexistence. Therefore, the immediate priority for both sides should be to use diplomatic channels and resolve the dispute peacefully. Chinese intent behind transgression. Changing dynamics along the LAC, India has been upgrading its roads and military infrastructure around LAC. Last year, India completed the Darbuk Shok Dolet Bagoldi DBO Darbuk Shok Dolet Bagoldi DBO road, which connects Leh to the Karakoram Pass. India also maintains a key landing strip at DBO at 16,000 feet. India is rapidly catching up with China, who already enjoys an advantage in both terrain and infrastructure. In these contexts, the standoff in Ladakh appears to have been triggered by China to obstruct border infrastructure upgradation activity by India. Arousing nationalist sentiments, experts on Chinese foreign policy are of the view that China's aggressive posture is not only focused along the LAC but on Hong Kong, Taiwan, and South China Sea. The motive behind these developments is to divert attention from the domestic economic crisis towards a nationalist sentiment. Signal against US India convergence. The strategy behind China's transgressions across LAC, especially in Sikkim and Ladakh, may intend to signal India to reassess its strategic convergence with the US. India's reaction. India has responded by balancing the troops' mobilization but prefers a diplomatic route for resolution of any dispute. However, in a border context, India's policy towards China is dotted with cooperation, discord, and competition. Cooperation. India has been in continuous engagement with China through bilateral, informal summits and multilateral forums such as BRICS, SCO, and the Russia India China Trilateral. Such cooperation is aimed at maintaining overall stability, deepening economic ties, and fostering diplomatic linkages on regional and international issues. Discord. India has adopted a policy of external balancing to tackle China's hegemony. The evolution of India's relationship with the US, Japan, Australia, and the Quad initiative among them indicates a growing convergence for stability in the Indo Pacific region. Competition. This is a relatively new policy whereby India seeks to counter China's influence in the economic sphere. This can be reflected in the following policies: countering BRI project of China with Africa Asia Growth Corridor. India has significantly increased grants, aid, and infrastructure developments in neighboring countries where China seeks to undermine India's influence. In order to reduce dependence on Chinese imports and protection of domestic industries, India has launched the Make in India campaign and has exited the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership RCEP negotiations. Way forward. Strategic sphere. Armed conflicts will serve neither the interest of China nor India as it incurs huge economic and political cost. Thus, India and China should bring the current situation under control and utilize the current situation as an opportunity to revive the stalled process of clarifying the LAC. Economic sphere. China, manufacturing hub, and India, a huge market, must realize that both are critical for their economic revival. In this context, China should consider bridging with the trade deficit by further opening up its service sector to Indian companies and increasing investments in India. Cultural sphere. Both countries can effectively use their soft power, example tourism, food, entertainment, etc., to further integrate their economies. This cultural cross connect must be increased so as to build up the people to people connection and enhance businesses that can consequently lead to resolving of conflicts at the national level. In this context, promotion of tourism through education, spiritual visits, especially on the Buddhist circuit, etc., must be promoted. India and China are amongst the largest economies, demography, markets, and militaries of the world. Therefore, it is in the interest of both the countries to adhere to the policy of Panchsheel and align their energies for development for their people, region, and global peace. Time to reset India Nepal ties. Recently, in a bid to assert its claim over the territory, the government of Nepal unveiled a new political map of the country, which included the regions of Kalapani, Lepu Lake, and Limpiadhura as part of its sovereign territory and rejected India's claim over these territories. The Nepal's Minister of Land Management, Padma Kumari Aryal, released the new political map of India and said that Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli was committed to protecting the territorial sovereignty and integrity of the country. Nepal has also claimed a large tract of land across Uttar Pradesh Gorakhpur in Susta as a part of its territory in the new maps released. Indian Army chief said that the Nepali government had protested the inauguration of India's link road to Mount Kailash in Lepu Lake and all sections of Nepalese society including all the political parties in the opposition have objected to the construction of the road. The former Director General of the Department of Survey of Nepal claimed that maps from 1850 and 1856, which were prepared by the Survey of India with the participation of Nepali authorities, had clearly stated that the Mahakal River originates from Limpiadhura 16 km northwest of Kalapani, thereby proving that Kalapani belongs to Nepal. Historical background of India-Nepal border. The Treaty of Sugauli, which was signed between the British East India Company and the Kingdom of Nepal in 1816, marked the beginning of demarcation of the modern India-Nepal border. The treaty, which declared the Mahakali River of Nepal as the border between the two countries, was expected to resolve border issues, but it did not. There is a continuous increase in disputes over border and surrounding no man's land over the last decades. Nearly a century ago, after signing of the Treaty of Sugauli in 1911, the Almora Gazetteer recorded that the Kali River is formed by the union of two headwaters, that is the Kalapani River that originates below the Lepu Lake and the Kuthi Yankit River that rises below the Limpiadhura range. The Kali River serves as the boundary between Uttarakhand, Kumaon region and Nepal from Limpiadhura 30.227 degree north, 80.920 degree east. The Lepulek Pass as well as the Limpayadhura Pass or Limpaya Pass are on Nepal border with Tibet. In addition to Mahakali or Shardha west, Gandak or Narayani south, and Mechi east are the two other rivers which demarcate the border between India and Nepal, and around 600 kilometers of the India-Nepal border is defined by rivers. The Mechi in the east, Mahakali in the west, and Narayani in the Susta area. Reasons for cold ties between India and Nepal. India's sovereignty over the Lepu Lake Pass is yet to be established as it continues to be a disputed reason. India's claims do not admit the fact that the Nepal-India Joint Technical Level Boundary Committee, which was able to settle nearly 97% of the border issues between them, has failed to resolve the dispute over Kalapani and Susta. The popular protest which erupted in Nepal due to opening of a link road to Lepu Lake by India is a highlight of an old story. Nepal claims that the Indian army has encroached 372 square kilometers towards Limpiadhura from Kalapani since the 1962 Indo-China War. There is a prevalence of asymmetric power relationship between the two countries, which has led Nepal to not able to force India to withdraw its troops from the area. The Nepal government has claimed many times that by taking advantage of its negligence in guarding its borders, India has encroached on its borderline. There have been reports from Nepal which claimed that the Indians from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar have encroached on over 60,000 hectares of land in 23 out of the 75 bordering districts. Bilateral relations between India and Nepal. The frequent high-level visits by the leaders of the two countries at different points of time and the interactions constitute the importance of the ties between the two countries. The political relations have always helped in promoting goodwill, trust, understanding, and cooperation between the two countries and have injected fresh momentum to further consolidate age-old and multifaceted bilateral relations of friendship and cooperation on a more mature and pragmatic footing. Nepal has received strong support and solidarity from the people and government of India in advancing its homegrown peace process as well as in the process of writing the constitution through the elected Constituent Assembly. The Indian cooperation started in 1952 with the construction of an airstrip at Gocharan, and after that, India has been assisting primarily in the areas of infrastructure development and capacity development of human resources in Nepal. BP Koirala Institute of Health Sciences, Dharan, Emergency and Trauma Center at Bir Hospital, Kathmandu, and Manmohan Memorial Polytechnic at Biratnagar are some of the flagship projects completed and operationalized under the Indian assistance. The integrated checkposts have been proposed at 4 points on the Indo-Nepal border, namely Ragzal Birganj, completed and operationalized from April 2018. Number 2, Sunauli Bhairahawa. Number 3, Jogbani Biratnagar. And number 4, Nepalganj Road to Nepalganj. Both the governments have set up three-tier mechanisms called Joint Ministerial Commission for Water Resources (JMCWR), Joint Committee on Water Resources (JCWR), and Joint Standing Technical Committee JSTC to implement agreements and treaties and also address water-induced problems of flood and inundation. Both Nepal and India have common approach to regional and multilateral institutions and hence work in tandem in the United Nations, non-aligned movement and other international fora on most of the important international issues. The recent visit of Indian Prime Minister to Nepal was successful in recalibrating. So it was successful in recalibrating Indo-Nepal ties to some extent as he emphasized the cultural ties that bind the two nations beyond strategic and economic factors and declaring Nepal to be the centerpiece of his government's neighborhood first policy. Challenges in India-Nepal relationship. The Sino-Nepal economic ties have grown dramatically over the past few years, with China becoming Nepal's biggest investor. There have been numerous instances that India failed to deliver on its commitments on time and it has gravitated Nepal towards China. It has been frequently recognized that Nepal possesses limited exportable articles when compared with India and the persistence of unequal balance between demand and supply of goods and articles. The question of balance of trade and balance of payments have been central when considered Indo-Nepal trade relations. The provision of open border between India and Nepal has posed a threat of internal security to India and constant trafficking of products and humans take place through this channel. There is a continuous political instability in Nepal which results in damaging the Nepal's development and its economy. Importance of Nepal to India. The location of Nepal is such that it is sandwiched between two of the most influential Asian countries, that is India and China, and it has for long been grounds for connection between the two developing economies. The geopolitical position of Nepal has made it critical to the security and stability of both India and China. The Himalayan mountain range has for years served as a natural barrier which has prompted Nepal to trade more across its flat border with India. The Nepal Investment Board has predicted that the electricity generated by harnessing power from more than 5,000 rivers fed by the Himalayan glaciers will be able to light up a third of the Indian subcontinent, and exporting electricity to India rather than China is easier because its rivers flow south of the Himalayas towards India's most populous states. Nepal shares its border with five Indian states, namely Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, and Sikkim, and is an important point of cultural and economic exchange. What is the way forward? Nepal has always been at the forefront of efforts to secure the rights of landlocked countries in international law, and despite having gone through a series of political and social crises, the Himalayan nation has performed well in asserting and protecting its freedom of action in comparison to its two powerful neighbors, that is, India and China. The boundary disputes between countries are a common issue, and the authority over Kalapani is one such issue which needs to be resolved between India and Nepal in order to strengthen their ancient and cultural ties. As Nepal enters a new era of consolidating gains of democracy, and achieving rapid economic growth and development, India will continue to remain a steadfast partner of government of Nepal to implement its vision of Samriddha Nepal, Sukhi Nepal, prosperous Nepal, happy Nepal. India should be providing an alternative narrative for India Nepal ties, one that takes into account long standing people to people ties and and cultural connect, even as it underscores New Delhi's commitment for an equitable and sustainable partnership between two sovereign nations. In 2016, India and Bangladesh settled their long ago border disputes peacefully through implementation of the Land Boundary Agreement in 1974 and its 2011 protocol. A similar kind of approach must be adopted by India to resolve the border dispute with its ancient friendly neighbor and build upon a new future of India Nepal relations. Now let's come to the next topic, that is why South China Sea matters to India. So, why South China Sea matters to India? Contention over South China Sea. Dilemma the Indo Pacific countries faces. As the two most consequential powers of the world, the United States and China, which are engaged in a fundamental transformation of their relationship, rest of the countries in the region face a dilemma. Almost nobody any longer thinks that China will conform to the US worldview or that China's rise from here on will be unchallenged. Okay, so almost nobody any longer thinks that China will conform to the US worldview on, or that China's rise from here on will be unchallenged. The Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's essay in the latest issue of Foreign Affairs cogently spells out this dilemma. So the Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's essay in the latest issue of Foreign Affairs cogently spells out this dilemma, how the US contributed to the region's prosperity. The Indo-Pacific has prospered under American hegemony for the previous 40 years, not just because of their huge investments. US invested $328.8 billion in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN alone, and a further $107 billion in China. However, it's not the investment alone, but also because of the security blanket that it provides. China might have replaced the US as the primary engine of growth in the last decade, but it has come with a cost: the assertion of Chinese power. The benign American military presence has afforded countries the opportunity to pursue economic prosperity without substantial increases in their own defense expenditures or having to look over their shoulders. No group of nations has benefited more than the presence of the US than the ASEANs. How Chinese military posture is different from the US. Chinese military postures, on the other hand, give cause for concern ever since they unilaterally put forward the Nine Dash Line in 2009 to declare the South China Sea as territorial waters. Their territorial claim itself is tenuous, neither treaty based nor legally sound. They act in ways that are neither benign nor helpful for long term peace and stability. In the first half of 2020 alone, Chinese naval or militia forces have rammed a Vietnamese fishing boat, Nepal burst a Philippines naval vessel, and harassed a Malaysian oil drilling operation, all within their respective EEZs. Since 2015, they have built a runway and underground storage facilities on the Subi Reef and Thitu Island, as well as radar sites and missile shelters on Fairy Cross Reef and Mischief Reef. They conducted ballistic missile tests in the South China Sea in June 2019 and continue to enhance naval patrols to enforce area denial for others. Fundamental choices the region faces. Going forward, the US and China face fundamental choices, but then so do the rest of us living in the Indo Pacific. America's role in the preservation of the region's peace and security should not be taken for granted. As COVID imposes crushing costs on all economies, the US may also be weighing its options. Finding justification for Chinese action in the South China Sea, even as countries in the region help themselves to Chinese economic opportunities while sheltering under the US security blanket, is also fraught with risk. Accommodation may have worked thus far, but regional prosperity has come at a mounting cost in geostrategic terms. The South China Sea is effectively militarized. In the post COVID age, enjoying the best of both worlds may no longer be an option. But ASEAN won't change the course suddenly. Nobody should expect that ASEAN will suddenly reverse course when faced with possible heightened Sino-US competition. China is a major power that will continue to receive the respect of ASEAN and, for that matter, many others in the Indo-Pacific, especially in a post-COVID world where they are struggling to revive their economies. ASEAN overtook the European Union to become China's largest trading partner in the first quarter of 2020, and China is the third largest investor, $150 billion in ASEAN. The Southeast Asians are skilled of finding the wiggle room to accommodate competing hegemons while advancing their interest. This does not, however, mean that they are not concerned over Chinese behavior in the South China Sea. They need others to help them in managing the situation. Validation of the U.S. military presence and collective efforts of stakeholders. A robust U.S. military presence is one guarantee. A stronger validation by the littoral states of the South China Sea helps the U.S. administration in justifying their presence in the American taxpayer. Others who have stakes in the region also need to collectively encourage an increasingly powerful China to pursue strategic interests in a legitimate way and on the basis of respect for international law in the South China Sea. The real choice is not between China and America, it is between keeping the global commons open for all or surrendering the right to choose one's partner for the foreseeable future. What is at stake for India? How the South China Sea situation plays out will be critical for our security and well-being. India must consider the following factors while calibrating its approach. Number 1, the South China Sea is not China's sea but a global common. Number 2, it has been an important sea lane of communication since very beginning and passage has been unimpeded over the centuries. Number 3. Indians have sailed these waters for well over 1,500 years. There is ample historical and archaeological proof of a continuous Indian trading presence from Kedah in Malaysia to Quanzhou in China. Nearly $200 billion of our trade passes through the South China Sea, and thousands of our citizens study, work, and invest in ASEAN, China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea. Number 5. We have stakes in the peace and security of this region in common with others who reside there, and freedom of navigation as well as other normal activities with friendly countries are essential for our economic well-being. In short, the South China Sea is our business. We have historical rights established by practice and tradition to traverse the South China Sea without impediment. We have mutually contributed to each other's prosperity for 2,000 years. We continue to do so. The proposition that nations that have plied these waters in the centuries past for trade and other peaceful purposes are somehow outsiders who should not be permitted to engage in legitimate activity in the South China Sea or have a voice without China's say should be firmly resisted. India's needs to responsive to ASEAN. India needs to be responsive to ASEAN. India needs to be responsive to ASEAN's expectations. While strategic partnerships and high-level engagements are important, ASEAN expects longer-lasting buy-ins by India in the future. They have taken the initiative time and again to involve India in Indo-Pacific affairs. It is not as if our current level of trade or investment with ASEAN makes a compelling argument for them to automatically involve us. They have deliberately taken a longer-term view. A restructuring of global trade is unlikely to happen anytime soon in the post COVID context. Regional arrangements will become even more important for our economic recovery and rejuvenation if we intend to heed the clarion call of Think Global, Act Local. India has to be part of the global supply chain in the world's leading growth region for the next half century. It is worth paying heed to the words from Singapore's Prime Minister, who writes that something significant is lost in an RCEP without India, and urges us to recognize that the value of such agreements goes beyond the economic gains they generate. Singapore is playing the long game. Are we willing to do so, even if it imposes some cost in the short term? So, what's the conclusion? India is a stakeholder in the South China Sea. What happens there have implications for us. In such a scenario, India must form a partnership with other players in the region and should attempt to make China follow international laws and global order. So that's all guys. See you in my next video. Bye.